Back here on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast, we're focusing our attention now on the Philadelphia Eagles, and they do play this week. They do play for the first time ever in Brazil for an NFL game down there, and a player on their roster who will actually make part of the 53-man roster now that we are in the official week leading up to their game is James Bradberry. When going over the transactions from the cut deadline back a couple weeks ago on, I think it was a Tuesday, not last week, but maybe the week before that, it seemed like this question about James Bradberry being on the Eagles, it was a bigger talking point than I was expecting, because I felt like the way James Bradberry was, the contract that they gave him, it feels like a lot of people in the organization, the teammates and everything like that, wanted to keep James Bradberry around. He was well received from everybody. It seemed like there was no issues there, right? But more so, it seemed like the fans, the Philadelphia Eagles fans, were pretty surprised that James made the final 53-man roster for a couple of reasons, right? The biggest one being that in 2023, it couldn't have gone much worse for James Bradberry, allowing a league-high 9 touchdowns while being in coverage on that play. Also, we saw Philadelphia go out and draft 2 corners, pretty much addressing that matter of fact. Allowing 9 touchdowns just yourself is just unacceptable. So the Eagles go out and draft 2 young, capable of starting defensive backs, and now everyone's looking at James Bradberry like, rightly so, that this could be the year that he is moved on from, because they did give him that extension, which makes it a little bit tricky a couple seasons ago. But to everyone's surprise, James Bradberry made the 53-man roster, but not as a defensive back, more so as a safety. He, a couple weeks ago, actually now a month ago probably, he offered to move to safety himself, and he's been getting a couple reps there this offseason, being deployed there. You saw it in the Patriots game and some other preseason games as well. But right now, with that how it is, James Bradberry at safety, it still doesn't fill a lot of people with too much assurance there, just because you look at the facts just of James Bradberry and playing safety. He has never played a snap at safety in an NFL game, has not played on special teams since 2021 in case the Eagles wanted to deploy him and find a role for him on special teams. And just the matter of fact that he is a safety, definitely not going to start, but to keep him around as a backup, at safety at his age of 30, he's at least 31, I want to say. The Eagles haven't kept a backup safety at that age since Tim Huck in 2001. So pretty much in my lifetime, they haven't had a safety back there at James Bradberry's age. I was born in 2001, and they haven't had one through the 23 years that I've been alive. So that is very unprecedented by the Eagles to do that, and they already have 4 other safeties on their roster. So all of that to say that it was a very clear pathway to just getting rid of James Bradberry in this sense. But again, to everyone's surprise, they decided to keep Bradberry on for another year. And now that we are in the week leading up to their game, we are officially in the week 1 period for the Eagles, because they play on Friday. They can't necessarily move on from James Bradberry right now, or it wouldn't make too much sense to do so. And I'll explain why after Howie Roseman explains why he decided to keep James Bradberry. He said, "When you see him play safety every day here and see his ability to diagnose his football instincts, I think for us, that's a transition. That's a different position than playing outside corner. He's got a different skill set. It's a long season. Having a veteran player like that on the roster that we know we can rely on when called upon, we felt it was very important." And that is what you expect, I guess, from Howie Roseman. Again, it feels like people within the organization, players as much as organization members, the general manager, the coaches, everybody likes James Bradberry, wants to keep him around. They really are pushing to keep James Bradberry around. But why I mentioned before, why it could be difficult to even move on from him right now, where it wouldn't make too much sense to do so, is because James Bradberry now is considered a vested veteran player, meaning that his 2024 salary will be guaranteed if he's on the roster on the week of their first game week, which again is on Friday. So we are pretty much in this week already. So to cut him right now and move on from him or trade him, you are still giving him guaranteed money. So it wouldn't make too much sense to just get rid of him at this point in time. And that is why now we are in a weird situation of whether or not, what are we going to see from him now? Because I don't expect them to trade him. There was some reports of the Eagles potentially keeping him on the roster, just having the preseason play out just to raise his stock a little bit more. Maybe some teams are interested now seeing him play safety and are thinking, wow, maybe we could, benefit from that. Maybe we'll work out a trade with the Eagles. But now we are already in the game week of their first week 1 matchup against the Packers. So their Eagles are already giving him guaranteed money, so it doesn't make too much sense now to hold on to him or get rid of him, at this point in time. And Howie Roseman was also reluctant to, at the time of saying that statement a couple weeks ago now, that guaranteeing James Bradberry a roster spot, mentioning that no one's spot is guaranteed, but right now it's looking like quite the opposite just because you are supposed to give him that guaranteed money. And James Bradberry, again, last year as a corner, was rated the last corner, the last defensive back, or the lowest defensive back according to Pro Football Focus. And with that being the case, I'm assuming we're going to see him more at safety, if anything, barring any injuries or anything like that to Darius Slay, Kelly Ringo, Quinyon Mitchell, or even Cooper DeJean. I'm feeling that we're going to see him at safety a lot more, which could mean that he probably wouldn't play too much. And also, defensive coordinator Vic Fangio has also been on the train of singing his praises this offseason. So, weird situation where people, I think, want to see James Bradberry get back to the player that he was, because he made the All-Pro and was considered a Pro Bowler just in that season that he got that extension from the Eagles. But now, to see a drop-off like that, Philadelphia Eagles fans are not ones to wait around per se and maybe just keep thinking that something will change and maybe giving players a second chance, especially for a rough period like James Bradberry had, and you throw in there the collapse that they had towards the end of the year, much in to blame for their defense actually. So with that all being the case, they wanted to see change this offseason, and they did change their coordinators. They got new linebackers. They got new players on the defensive line, but still, James Bradberry's kept around. And I thought that mostly the Eagles fans were ones that were petitioning to get rid of him, thinking that that they saw enough last year. But James Bradberry probably will stay on this roster the entirety of 2024. And, for right now, did it make sense for them to keep Bradberry? In the logistical answer, probably not. I feel like you could have used that for somebody else, like I mentioned before, that could benefit you as a team with special teams. James Bradberry hasn't done that in a while. Maybe getting some snaps in dime packages, nickel packages, or anything like that. Again, Bradberry hasn't really done that too much in a long time. Not to say that he can't do it at all, but it's still going to be an adjustment, and you have other safeties at his position, right? You're carrying 4 other ones at this point in time. You have young players that are wanting to, use up and be used in this Eagles defense. So for James Bradberry to be thrown out there, and also he didn't put out the best performances in the preseason as well. That again was another point of emphasis for fans to kind of jump on him and think that, this wasn't worth keeping for James Bradberry on this team. So right now it was a little bit confusing on how the Eagles, played all of this out. To move on from him or cut him right now, I think would be even more of a surprise than actually keeping him like they did, just because they owe him that guaranteed money. So where will he play? At this point in time, a lot of that will be dictated on the injuries, on certain developments of some young players. They're very high on a guy like Quinyon Mitchell. So seeing his development, he right now, just based on the reports that I have seen, he is playing more so in a nickel and dime package as a slot corner. So whether or not he moves to the outside, they move maybe James Bradberry inside. If they do that, they could explore different avenues with this, obviously, as well. They have Eli Rogers, I think, also coming back and playing on this secondary. So that's another name just added on top of that before James Bradberry. Of course, you look at the benefits off the field as a veteran, being a teacher to some of these young guys, but on the field is obviously what matters at the end of the day. And to say that I wasn't confused or surprised that James Bradberry wasn't cut would be a lie, but I think it won't become too much of a problem really on the field unless you are dealing with a crazy amount of injuries like you were last year. And for that to happen 2 years in a row, I think would be very, very rare to see. But you can't always be too sure about that. So a problem, when this would really become a problem for the Eagles and Bradberry, would be if he does happen to come in and play at safety, a position that he's not too comfortable per se, and he makes a couple mistakes, takes some wrong angles, wrong reads on some plays. That's when this decision will come back to bite the Eagles. But those are all hypotheticals right now. Obviously, we are just projecting, but it definitely rubbed some people the wrong way. Just very confusing as to why they kept him. But hopefully for Bradberry, for the Eagles as well, he can regain some of that confidence, some of that level of play that he showed in a couple seasons ago. Because just to say that he lost it, I think is unrealistic. So I think it's just more so a fact of the level of confidence that he has right now riding into this season. I think it'll do him good to kind of sit on the bench and watch a little bit, but hopefully it all works out for the Eagles. Hopefully it all plans out the way that they want to going forward. But that'll be it for that segment. We have one more to get to on today's show. Predicting how the AFC North will finish this year is one of the tougher ones I had to do. So we're going to get into how I think it's going to end and why I believe there could be a repeat champion this year in the AFC North. So stay tuned. We're going to come back with discussing that division after this break.